Amazon is not afraid of taking risks. If you bet on 100 new ideas and only one of them is successful, but this one idea produces a $10 billion business, like you can justify making a lot of mistakes. As long as you understand the customer, who you're serving, and what problem you're trying to address for them, you are 10 steps ahead of everyone else. When I joined Amazon, I learned about the PRFAQ framework. It helps you understand what you don't know, and it helps you think critically about the initiative that you're trying to create. The measure of clearness for a business is not when the founder can tell someone on their team what they're doing, is when this person can pass this to someone else. If you want to create a viable business, you really need to understand how you're adding value to your customers. At Amazon, they usually say, start slow so you can move fast later. Like, do not start accelerating before you know where you're going. This is actually advice that I provide to a lot of people who come to me and it's like, hey, I'm eager to found a startup. And I say,
okay, so I guess to begin, Marcelo, Calbucci, thank you for joining us. What is it really like being an executive at Amazon?
wow, you're not starting easy. Thank you for having me, David. It's a lot of work to be an executive at Amazon, right? Not only you're dealing with your own team and trying to figure out where the puck is going, so you can build for the future, but at the same time you are involved with all your peers and your leaders to make sure that everything that you're doing is aligned. So it's a more than 40 hours a week for sure type of job, and it's very intense.
What makes Amazon so successful?
I think compared to companies of that size, Amazon is not afraid of taking risks. And if you read what Jeff Bezos has written in the past, decades ago, he talks about the opportunities that you have to take a chance on, even if there is a high probability of failure, right? Because if you bet on 100 new ideas and only one of them is successful, but this one idea produces a $10 billion business, like you can justify making a lot of mistakes, right? So Amazon has an attitude of let's give it a try. Let's build things. Let's experiment. Let's see what works. And a lot of things don't work, but some of them become like $1 billion opportunities.
It's kind of like any investor. It's the same kind of idea there, right? It's that we take a punt. We know that the stats are against us, but for the couple that do well, it's been worth it.
Yeah, I love that positioning back here because it's like thinking as a portfolio, right? Like you as an investor, you want to buy stocks on a lot of companies so that you're not subject to a single stock failing. And investors, VCs, for example, do the same thing. They bet in 20, 30, 40 startups. And, if 5 of them succeed, they did well. Amazon takes this approach as well, right? So it's going to bet in 100 ideas. Of course, it doesn't expect just 1 in 100 to succeed, but probably like 10 or 20 in 100 to succeed.
Thinking about that when it comes to startups, it could be argued that Amazon can take a lot of risk and can go for 100, thinking that if one works, it's great. That's much harder to do on a reduced budget if you're a small to medium-sized business. What would you say to that?
Yes, absolutely. What I say is usually when you're a startup, you have one bet, you have only one shot, right? And so what you have to do is you have to maximize your chances of success. And you do that by learning more about the market, by minimizing risks, by mitigating risks, by increasing our probability. There is no guarantee of success, but if you improve the things that are more likely to lead to success and reduce the things that are more likely to lead to failure, like you improve your overall success chances.
What is one piece of advice you tell young people who want to start a company?
This is actually advice that I provide to a lot of people who come to me and it's like, hey, I'm eager to found a startup. And I say, join a startup first, right? Like if you're thinking about doing a startup, it would benefit you to work for a startup for a year or two because you're going to learn a lot in a very intense environment. And you're not going to make silly mistakes that you would if you started your startup coming out of college or from a big company.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Kind of learn from the failings of others, I guess, as well, which reduces risk, as you were talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
What were some of the things that you would say? Because of course, it's a big difference working in a company like Amazon and I think Microsoft as well, that you worked in, huge companies, multinational, billions of dollars, versus the smaller startups. But there are still some principles that you could copy across. So what would you say are maybe the top few principles that you think apply regardless of size?
Yeah, I would say the most important one is understanding our customer and their problems, right? That's a principle that applies to anything, not only like big companies, small companies. It applies to nonprofits and to research and to any kind of work that you do. Like, as long as you understand the customer, who you're serving, and what problem you're trying to address for them, like, you are 10 steps ahead of everyone else, right? So these are like fundamental laws of business and organizations and anything like that. The other aspect is to know that failure is part of growth, right? Like, there is no such thing as like everything works the first time and every time after that. You will fail. The important thing is how do you absorb the lessons from that failure and like try again and adjust and do it better. Like, you might remember in the past you used to say like the first version of a product is not good. I mean, the first Xbox or the first PlayStation or the first Kindle or the first Alexa, that's okay. You're going to learn so much, and then you apply those lessons to the next version of whatever product you're doing.
With your background, you've distilled a lot of your insights and wisdom into a new book that you just released a couple of months ago, as of the date of this recording. The PR FAQ Framework, Adapting Amazon's Innovation Framework to Work for You. What can small businesses learn from Amazon's narrative driven innovation approach?
Yeah, so when I joined Amazon a few years ago, after I've done almost 20 years of startups, and I learned about the PRFAQ framework, which stands for Press Release and Frequently Asked Questions. I was immediately stunned by how valuable that would be for founders, product leaders, innovators outside of Amazon. But there was so little written about it. And I was really excited because one of the things that a PRFAQ framework does, and this is what I put in my book, it helps you understand what you don't know, and it helps you think critically about the initiative that you're trying to create. Like, really think about the gaps on your thinking, about the feasibility, the viability, the market, what's available out there, how is customers thinking about it. So as you write this in a narrative form, so you have to be coherent as you think through it, it allows you to fill those gaps with information or do research, or just say like, this is an assumption, we don't know, right? But at least you're calling it out. So that's very valuable for any kind of business of any size.
What made you decide to write a book about that?
Yeah, I was really excited about the framework, and I really felt that more people should know about it. And so when I left Amazon, I was going to do a startup, and was like, wait, what if I read a book first? So I wrote the book and published it, like I said, just a couple months ago, just about 2 months ago. And like, I'm really excited of people like trying this to help them think about what what is their next project, right? And it could be a whole business, like an entrepreneurial business. It could be a podcast. It could be a nonprofit. It could be a program that you want to launch. Anything fits into that framework, because the framework is really to think about a vision and a strategy. And you can have a vision for anything, really, like why we're bringing this to the world, who is going to benefit from it, why they're going to like it, why they're going to use it. That kind of mentality, you flesh it out with the framework.
It sounds simple, doesn't it? Understand what your audience need, understand what your customers need, what they're struggling with, and how we can help them if they even need it. I find my background is in sales, and I've trained and coached salespeople for years, and I find it shocking the amount of salespeople, when I ask them, tell me about a feature of your product, and they tell me, and I say, why would somebody care about that? And they can't answer the question. They don't know, which is quite shocking. So I think it's really valuable to help that thought process go down that route. I wonder, it sounds like you're saying that this process is obviously great for the writer to get them thinking. What about the consumer of the output, if that makes sense?
Yeah, there is three parts to a PRFAQ, right? To this framework and the method behind. One is this document that is a very specific template that you use. It's 6 pages long. The first page is a press release, and then you have 5 pages of frequently asked questions that you answer for yourself. By the way, it's called a press release, but you're not going to send it to the press. It's only for internal use, right? It's just like to paint a vision of the future. The second aspect of the PRFAQ that makes it powerful is how you write using the right combination of data and stories. It can't be just data, it can't be just story, and it can't be, marketing, salesy, aspects to it. You have to bring clarity to what you're writing. The third one, which is what I consider the most powerful, is the review sessions that you have with everyone in your organization. The team that's going to be working with it, your peers, your leadership, the stakeholders, and use them to influence and collaborate on this document. You're not writing a document and coming to people and saying, let me present you my brilliant idea. You're writing a document and going to them and say, like, help me refine this idea into a better idea with a higher chance of success. So you get everyone involved. And as you said, Becky, the important thing on the PRFAQ is like everyone needs to understand the why this project must exist, right? What is the reason behind it? What is the outcome for the business? What is the outcome for the customer? And what is the outcome for the team involved? Like you get alignment on that, everything almost like trickles down more easily afterwards.
You've had a lot of great success in your ventures so far. And we're talking now about your book, but I'm curious, what are some books that inspired you? If you could name like 3 books, let's say, what would you recommend, for your other the audience to read?
Yeah, I would say the first book is really The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but you can say like the way startups were built before the lean startup and the way startups were built after lean startup. It was really a huge mark for how people think about startups as experiments, right? And as an experiment, you have to have this loop of like build, measure, and learn until you find something that works. We talk about like the version one of the product. You need to iterate on that and improve it. So the lean startup it's a very, very important book. The other book is both Inspired and Empowered by Marty Kagan, 2 books. They really talk about product and how to think about product and how to understand the feasibility and viability of product tech products, but it applies to everything else. The other book that I say has been very important is Tony Woolwick, um, What Customers Want. That's the title of the book. It's a really good book that talks about understanding the jobs that customers are trying to get done.
Kind of going back to what Becky mentioned there, how with her sales background, when she would ask clients, why would a customer want this? And they had this block, like they didn't know how to answer that. And now it sounds like you're kind of coming at that once again. In your mind, in your experience, why do you think it's challenging for the founder who spent so much time building this for customers, not being able to ask what seems like the fundamental primal question as to why they should care?
It's really the curse of knowledge. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but it's the idea that once you're very familiar with something, sometimes you struggle to explain or to even challenge what you assume the world knows and the world thinks about it. So a lot of times the founders know, but they don't know how to articulate or how to pass that forward. And that's very important, right? Because you can't be in the room all the time. So the measure of clearness for a business is not when the founder can tell someone on their team what they're doing, is when this person can pass this to someone else, right? So the PRFAQ really help with that 2 degrees away. So when a new employees join the company, like how they learn very quickly about the vision and strategy of what they're doing, right? So the PRFAQ is a great framework to help with that because you're writing a coherent narrative that people can read and understand without you being in the room. So that's a great measure of success here.
I think that's the thing, is that sometimes we can have amazing ideas, but it's getting the idea from my head into your head, which is often the barrier for a lot of people. And it's clarity of thinking, understanding what other people don't know, and getting rid of our assumptions, articulating clearly. That's ironic that I said articulating clearly badly, but it's those kind of things that get in the way. Do you find that, so the document side of writing everything down and getting that there, is there still a barrier with people speaking it, with it being able to share their ideas in a verbal, vocal way?
Yeah, no, what I think it happens is when you write, it not only helps you think, but helps you articulate, verbally your idea as well. Much better than if you just create a PowerPoint and then try to explain it, right? Because I think you do more deep thinking when you're writing, and like you think about, oh, should I go this direction or that direction? And then you decide, no, I'm going to go this direction. You never write the other aspect of it, but you process in your brain. So when someone asks you a question, you're much faster and clearer and articulating why you chose that option as well. So it becomes easier for people to start from a PRFAQ and then move to, a pitch or to a PowerPoint or to other forms of communication.
You believe that in order to be successful, you must find clarity around the customer and their problems. Could you maybe add to why that is important?
Yeah, that's the only thing that matters really, right? Like if you want to create a viable business, you really need to understand how you're adding value to your customers. Because if your customers don't buy your product or don't buy your service, or they don't come back because they don't find it valuable, you don't have a business anymore. You might have a nonprofit, but even in the case of nonprofits, they do have customers that they are trying to engage with and sustain. So that is key to the success of any business, really.
How do you find clarity around the customer and their problems? A lot of people send out surveys, but mileage may vary with surveys. I find people might not answer honestly, or they might skip it entirely. How would you suggest people go around finding clarity? What are some tactics that you found successful?
Yeah, so surveys are good if you can reach like dozens or hundreds of people for them to answer the survey, and you get like some quantitative data, right? But nothing beats qualitative data, which is to talk and observe your customers. So I believe there is like three layers, right? So there is like what your customers tells you what they want, which you should mostly ignore, by the way. What you believe your customers want, and actually what they really need, right? And you only figure out that what they really need once you really understand them better than they understand themselves. Like you observing them doing the work, and like you can come up with solutions that they would never have thought about to tell you as a problem, even. Right? There is a famous quote from Henry Ford that if I had asked people what they want, they would have said faster horses. So that's the idea that sometimes customers don't know how to articulate what they want or the problem that they have, and for you to understand the need. On that case, the need was transportation. Like it didn't matter the mechanism; it was transportation.
So would you say then that it's about conducting essentially interview style conversations to be able to dig into, ask questions, what's happening here, how is that playing out, how is that affecting them?
Yeah, there is several techniques to do exactly that, right? Like how do you talk with your customers, not just sell them, but to understand their problem? Like how do you pull that information from them and start slowly to figure out what you need to do? But another way is sometimes you are the customer, right? And you have a deep understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve. Maybe you're a parent and you're trying to create a new product for new moms, and like you experience that, so you have a hands-on insights into the problem. But the other way is also to try to sit next to your customer when they are trying to do something and observe them doing it. I call like acting like an anthropologist, right? Like I'm observing people like cook a meal and understand the problems that they have before I go out and try to create a new recipe app. So that's one way of doing it. It's much harder to do, but it is the right approach if you want to do something that really addresses the customer need.
How is defining who you're serving and what pain point you're addressing through the PR FAQ framework changed the way that you approach product development?
Well, the first thing is a lot of times people, including myself, get excited about an idea. I'm going to build this thing, right? I'm going to launch this thing. And then you have to pause and say, like, but who wants to use that and why they want to use? So I usually say people have three ways to start a new project, two sparks to start a new project. One is they have an idea for a product and it's like, I'm going to build this. And then you have to figure out what problem you're solving and for whom. Sometimes they identify a problem and they're like, okay, now I need to figure out which customers have this problem and what solution should I have. And sometimes they have a customer. So I'll give an example here. Maybe you identify that you want to work with veterinarians, right? And you don't know what problem veterinarians have. So you go and you talk to veterinarians and, like, let me understand how you do your work and like what problems you're encountering on your day to day. Maybe I can come up with a problem statement and a solution for that. So that's one way. Other way is like you might make an assumption or you might discover that veterinarians have a hard time with accounting, right? And like keeping receipts and invoices and all the stuff. I was like, oh, great, I can create a product to solve that problem. But you can still go back and say like, well, who else has this problem? Are veterinarians the only one? Or there are other types of customers that have, like, how do I define my customer for that case? So regardless of what you're doing, you always need to have clarity on customer, problem, and solution. So usually you have only one of them when it's getting started. And the job is like to find the other two.
Makes sense. I don't know if you've seen, there's a kids movie called, I think it's called Robots, and it's about robots. And they build things. And the slogan that they use in that movie is see a need, fill a need. And it's that, right? Find the need, find the pain, find the problem, and create the solution for it. And the extra layer of understand the customer deeply.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Wisdom in kids' films. There's so much of it. I wonder if you could expand a little bit on the working backwards process in Amazon and what that looks like and how that links to the PRFAQ.
Yeah, so the PRFAQ is the manifestation of working backwards. Working backwards is more about an approach, right? And the idea of working backwards is you start from the end, meaning what outcome do you want? So the press release is an example of that. When you write your press release, even though you haven't started and you haven't done anything, let's go back to the veterinarian accounting example, right? Even though you haven't done anything, you're just on the research phase, your press release is going to read as if you're launching the product today. Right? So we start with, today we are launching this new product for veterinarians to not have to worry about accounting and automating with AI everything they are doing. And you write that press release as if it already existed. And that's the idea that to achieve that, how do you build, what do you need to get to that point so that press release becomes reality? So that's the working backwards approach to the problem.
Amazon is worth $2 trillion, which would make it the 12th largest country right after Russia. What were the key strategies to achieve this?
Yeah, Amazon is like a small country. He has, at any given time, between 1.5 million and 2 million employees. So it can be considered the size of a small country. And because of that, Amazon is very distributed. And it's hard to think of Amazon as like one monolithic company. It's more like 1,000 little companies, right? You have teams that have only 5 people. You have teams of 50 people. You have teams of 100 people, each one doing their thing, running, trying, experimenting, and launching new products. So I think one thing that can be attributed to Amazon's success is the experimentation. Like they write PRFAQs for everything. Every new program, business, policy, process at Amazon starts with a PRFAQ. There is debate. Sometimes they are heated debates. And there is decisions that go around like, should we do this? Should we do this later? Should we not do it? And experiment and learn from it as well. So I think Amazon, it's very bold in their approach to trying new things and entering the market.
In your experience, what are some attributes of like top leaders that you have worked for?
Top leaders are really good at painting a vision and articulating it well, so people listen to them and feel excited about, feel inspired by it, and they want to pursue. The other thing is the right balance of autonomy and collaboration with your team, right? So there is the hands-off leaders that say like, I'm not going to get involved at all with anything, which I don't think it's a good idea. There was the hands-on leaders who is in every meeting and like making sure that every detail is the way they want, which is not scalable. Like you can be like that, but there is a happy medium here where a leader is involved enough to provide feedback on the work, but also allow the team to experiment and do lots of things. So I think it's very important for every leader to find that happy medium.
Yeah, balance is really challenging to find, but it seems to be the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go back a little bit to the, so you said it's a 6-page document, the PRFAQ. And I'm imagining that there are some people, just based on the way their personalities are, that go, I've got an idea. I'm going to skip that part, right? And I'm just going to go straight to implementation. What are the dangers of doing that in your experience?
Yeah, what's going to happen? Like, let's separate. Like, if you're doing this alone or if you're doing this with a team, right? If you're doing this alone, the risk that you have is like you didn't apply enough critical thinking or judgment to an idea. You got so excited by it that you say like, I'm just going to do it, right? I'm going to launch this podcast. I'm going to launch this product. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to build a thing. And then what you realize is like there were some elements that you missed early on, the unknown unknowns that you could have identified if you just pause for a couple of days, like to write the idea and maybe to review with a friend, an advisor, a spouse, so they can provide some feedback and go like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that, right? So what's going to happen is you increase your chance of success. Now, if you're working with a team, then I think it's even more important because you need to find alignment. You need to agree on like where are we going and why we are going in that direction, right? Because what's going to happen is if you just say to everyone like, hey, let's build this product, it's going to be great, here's how I want the product to work, people are going to make a ton of assumptions of like who's the customer, what problem we're solving, how people are going to find this product, what feature we should have, and each person is going to move in a slightly different direction. So what end up happening is lots more meetings, lots more emails, lots more documents, because like people don't understand why things are not aligning, right? So if you're going to build a bridge from two different directions, you better coordinate, otherwise you're not going to meet each other in the middle.
So it's almost like the people that might be trying to cut the corners in order to get this end up putting more work on everybody's plate anyway, and it takes longer to get where they want to go anyway.
Yes. At Amazon, they usually say, there's a saying that it is like, start slow so you can move fast later, right? And I'm not saying like using the PRFAQ is a way to slow down. It's a way to get clarity before you accelerate. Like, do not start accelerating before you know where you're going.
That's start slow so you can move fast later. Sounds like a agile kind of adjustment to the old adage, measure twice and cut once.
Yeah, sounds right.
You've worked with Pioneer Square Labs as the head of product. What can you tell us about the culture there and what you're learning as from a high performing venture studio like PSL?
Yeah, so PSL is when I worked there, our primary goal was to discover needs in the market so that we could build startups and spun off those startups into their own entities. And we've done many of those. The really hard thing is to quickly identify needs. It's not a trivial problem to solve, right? So like you mentioned, we did surveys, we talk to customers, we interview people, we observe issues. It's really hard to do it right. And when possible, we would build prototypes and put out there so people would try it, and like we would see if there was demand or not for that kind of solution for that problem. And it was a phenomenal time that I spent there. Like I spent a year there and probably work on 6 different projects, trying new startups. And like I said, most startups are not going to go anywhere because they haven't identified a real customer need. So what we were trying to do is accelerate the period of learning, right? So instead of taking a year to discover that it would be really hard to build a business, can we do it in 3 months? So our entire engine was optimized for fast experimentation.
And were you able to do that to bring it down from a year's worth of discovery into 3 months?
I would say yes, not exactly 3 months, but sometimes we can do much faster than it would take to do it, the old way in the market.
And what was some of the learning with reducing that time frame? Like, did you find one strategy? Because this is well before your PRFAQ framework. So could you talk to us about what was the best strategy at that time?
Yeah, sure. Like what we really did was we created facades, like fake websites, that sounded like a product existed. And all that we were asking was like enter your email address to sign up, or something like that. Like enter your email address to be notified when this happens. And we would run ads on Facebook or Google or LinkedIn and send people to that website. And we would measure how many people would enter their email because the value proposition was interesting enough. They're like, oh, I want to learn about this. So that was a way that we used to, and they still do that. I'm not there anymore, but they still do that to measure demand, right?
I heard something similar actually. Stephen Bartlett in a recent podcast was talking to somebody about this, that he'd had, I think he ran 70 different book titles. And I think it was for the same book, but it was just to test the different book titles, and then ran different ads and tested the conversion. And for the same concept, different title, they had a difference between 15% conversion, 1.5, to 0.03% conversion, just based on the different titles. So it's fascinating and quite cool in the world in which we live that you can, for not a lot of money, test ideas in that way and see what is being taken on by your target audience.
Yeah, in the context of a startup studio, it would be more like instead of testing titles, testing book concepts. Should my next book be about recruiting on startups or fundraising on startups or like, you know, building process within your startups? So you would put three different things out there and it would measure like what people are more interested in because that indicates what problem they have that they are trying to address. Right? Once you find the problem, then you can do the other part, which is like, how do we brand this? Like, how do we speak about this problem in a different way? And then you can test different messagings.
You've also been a mentor for Techstars for over 7 years in both Seattle and London, which is not too far from Becky. What has been like kind of a common theme that you've found in all that time, like a common mistake that founders, obviously brilliant, obviously great ideas, but what's like the biggest roadblock between them getting the traction that they desire?
Yeah, I think that's worth an entire book to talk about it because founders makes a lot of mistakes. One, I think we already talked about, like sometimes they don't really understand the customer and the problem they are trying to solve, and they don't know how to articulate it well. So that becomes an impediment for them to talk to investors, talk to customers, talk to potential employees, candidates that want to join their organization. So they need to get clarity on that. The second thing that I saw very common is sometimes founders get confused about the value of investment, getting VC money and angel money, right? Too many founders celebrate like, hey, we raised $1 million or we raised $5 million. And that's not really a good reason to celebrate because raising money from an investor does not guarantee success at all, right? Like closing a new deal from a customer is the reason to celebrate, right? Getting revenue from a customer is the reason to celebrate. So you have to help founders understand what is adding value to their business, which is customers and solutions, the solutions that they build, and what is just like they have to have it, otherwise they can't build the other stuff, which is like capital and operations and an HR organization and everything else that goes behind it.
What would you say is the main difference between startups that go through Techstars and startups that go through PSL's Venture Studio? Are there similarities or differences?
Yeah, it's very different, right? Because the Techstars is an accelerator. So you as a founder and your co-founder apply to Techstars. You already have a company, you already have an idea, likely you already have a prototype or a product, and you are joining Techstars to accelerate your business, right? So just like Y Combinator or the many other accelerators around the world. So you accelerate that by talking with lots of mentors, talking with a lot of investors, talking with potential customers. Like Techstars helps you in that context. PSL is more like they start the ideas. Pioneer Square Labs, they start the ideas, right? Like they go and they test it. There is no necessarily no founder involved. There is no one there. The company is just trying it out to see what works. And once they found something that works, then they go find a CEO, a CTO, and people to take it to the next level.
I wonder, Marcelo, if you could expand on the learn, write, listen loop and how that helps people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned about the Lean Startup by Eric Ries, right? And the Lean Startup had this build, measure, learn loop, which is very important for you to do experimentation. Um, and what I said in my book is before you build, like learn, write, and then listen to feedback on what you wrote, right? And keep on that loop for a few weeks so that you can refine before you start and go build something. Right. So the learn is really absorbing the information that is around you or research or your Google search or talking to a chat GPT. Then you write so that you can articulate and think critically about the problem that you're trying to solve. Then you listen to the feedback of your team, your peers, the people that are going to get involved. And then you learn a lot more. You incorporate again into the document and you keep refining the document until you get to a point that you build the conviction that either you should do this now, you should not do this, or you should do this, but not now, right? So that's the conviction that you're trying to achieve.
I think as well for founders of startups that are pre-funding, it's also a very valuable thing to have done those loops a few times and get the data to back up to an investor that there's legs in it, rather than just this is my brilliant idea and let me hope that I can story tell well enough that you're gonna jump on board.
Yeah. Well, what happens often is like, entrepreneurs, they build a pitch deck, right? Their Google slide or their PowerPoint, and it's 10 or 12 slides, and they rehearse it, their ass off until they are like really good at delivering that. And then when they go to present to an investor, like on slide number 3, the investor raised their hand and ask a question and like froze the entire thing, out of its track. And that's a very common problem, right? If they had done a PRFAQ ahead of time, even if they converted to slides later, they would be so much more prepared to answer questions about why certain choices were made, or to bring the conversation back to its main track, as it's need to be. So, what I tell is like, you're not slowing down, you're just like getting better at telling the story instead of like rehearsing in front of a screen. Like you're writing and rehearsing on your mind.
Well, Marcelo, is there like one thing that you'd like readers to take away from your book? What's the main impact that you would like to make with that book?
Yeah, I think we're really trying to do here is help people increase their chance of success, right? If you do certain things, there is no guarantee of success, but you are less likely to fail. Let's put it this way, right? You eliminated more of the risks that you would find later on, which is going to help you be more likely to succeed.
And what is the process of writing a book? Could you share that with folks who haven't written a book yet? Was it like longer than you thought? Was it fun, like more fun than you thought? Could you share kind of that experience with the audience?
Yeah, when I started, I thought that writing the first manuscript was what was going to take the longest. The reality is the editing and the revisions is what takes the most time to write a book. So I'm a fast writer, so it took me about a month to write the book, a little bit less than that, but it really took like 4 or 5 months of revisions and editing. So it's a long process because you need feedback as well. A book is a product as well. So I put on the hands of several people and asked like, give me feedback on this product, right? And then you have to incorporate all that back into the book. So it takes a long time.
It goes back to that loop of listen, learn, and write a few times before you get the polished product at the end.
Yes, that's right.
Well, is there anything that we didn't touch on, Marcelo, that you think we should highlight?
I would say that a lot of people are reluctant at writing because they think they're not good writers, right? And my answer to that is business writing is not romance writing. Like you're not writing, the next fiction or the next bestseller book on Amazon. You're really writing a specific way to make decisions so that you get clarity. And on the book, I explain how you can write in a way that you maximize, decision making. So just because you feel like writing is not for me, I'm gonna have to disagree. If you work in any company or any organization, you know how to write. You written emails, you read messages on Slack, you written documents, and a PRFAQ is going to be a very effective way for you to fine tune that skill using the practices from the book.
And trying to avoid using ChatGPT to fill in the gaps, right? It kind of defeats the point, I guess.
I think it defeats the point because if ChatGPT is doing the writing, ChatGPT is doing the thinking. And the important thing on the writing is the thinking, not the writing itself.
When I was learning, I think it was Japanese. I learned Spanish in grade school, but Japanese as an adult. And I started learning about how the mind processes information, language rather. And it was kind of an aha moment for people that didn't know, and I didn't know at the time, that just reading or just listening doesn't help your speaking or your writing. They're actually like different regions of the brain. They inform. I mean, it's like having ingredients, but it's not like the finished dish. And so you really need to work all four parts, and in order to get better at any one of the parts. So it's similar when you're outsourcing kind of some of the thinking process to ChatGPT or other models. You are missing out on some fundamental ingredients, I think.
Yeah, 100%. There is a lot of scientific research around that, like how writing helps you think better and recall information as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a real privilege and pleasure speaking with you, Marcelo. You bring a lot of experience into the conversation. And where can people pick up your book, and where can they follow you in your career?
Yeah, the easiest way is go to Google and search for PRFAQ book. My result is going to be number one. And from there, you can find all the contact information for me.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Marcelo, for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Thank you.